A question came up the other day on one of the Facebook groups about the work being pulled into the machine, and that's all to do with the direction of the cutter relative to the work that you're. Pretty straightforward running a simple rebate in a piece of timber in terms of what the direction is, because most router tables and most people know that you pass it in a particular direction. In this case, looking at the fence from right to left or away from me because of where I'm stood. And it doesn't matter on the profile. We're not really interested at all in what shape cut we're going to get. It's all about how we're cutting. Now, if I wanted to widen this rebate, all I've got to do is move the fence over slightly and recut it. I can't move the fence in because there's nothing there to cut. And the same is true of a slot. Okay, that's really simple. I've got the same width slot as I've got diameter of cutter, in this case 15 millimeters. But again, really doesn't matter. Now, the good thing about the router is I don't always have to have exactly the same size cutter of the width of the cut that I want to make. As you've already seen, I've made a smaller rebate than the width of my cutter, but I can also make a wider trench with the same cutter, keep it at the same height, and all I've got to do is move it along. And this is where the confusion comes in. Which way do you move it? Well, the simple rule is always move the fence away from the cutter.
What?
Always move the fence away from the cutter.
You do what?
Always move the fence away from the cutter. So if I move the fence away from my cutter now to widen this cut, you'll see that I'm cutting this portion, and it's exactly the same as if I was cutting a rebate. I move the fence away, I move the work in. Now, I've deliberately stopped short of that cut, so hopefully you can see that I've widened the cut and I can do that all day long. I can just creep across and make it as wide as I need. If I was to move the fence in towards the cutter, what I'm doing is I'm going to end up trapping work, i.e. where I'm going to cut, between the inside edge of the cutter and the fence. And this can become dangerous. Because of the direction of the cutter, and if you want to know more about just the basics of which direction of cut for applications, I've got a video, I'll make a link or something, card, whatever, to talk through the whole lot. But the cutter's rotating, in this case, this way. Yeah. That means that on the outside, the cutting face is coming towards me, and on the inside face, i.e. nearest the fence, the cutter is moving away from me. So it's towards me on this side and it's away from me on the fence side. If I put work between the fence and the cutter, that is going to have the effect of cutting with the direction of cut, which is going to cause the cutter to basically act like a wheel and potentially grab the work and make it want to come in with the cutter. Now, that's a climb cut, as some people would refer to it, or a back cut. It will give us a nice fine cut, but if I'm holding on to this and it suddenly escapes away from me, it's going to want to pull me in towards the cutter. I don't want to be towards the cutter or come in contact with that. If it can do this to a solid piece of timber, what's it going to do to my little sausage fingers? Doesn't bear thinking about. The best thing that's likely to happen is it's going to cause this piece of wood to shoot out across the workshop, do damage, and potentially drag me in as well. Let's say, for example, I have marked out the width of my trench that I want, and I've accidentally cut on the wrong side of that line, i.e. I've cut all the way down here, and now I want to widen it the other way. Well, the simple way around that is to actually, kind of counterintuitively, cut on the other way. So basically feed my work into the cutter from the other direction.
Is that meant to work?
Do what? I don't... Richard, you can't say that in your video.
All of these widened on the inside, and the rotation of the cutter is pulling the timber out. So when you're widening cuts, whatever profile, whatever the purpose, using a router table or even a router handheld with a fence, move the fence away from the cutter.
Wait, how did you do that again?
Well, Chris, it's quite simple.
Move the fence away from the cutter.
You do what?
Away from the cutter.
I don't think I'm following you here, Richard. You're not making any sense.
If you move the fence towards the cutter, then you're changing the side of the cutter which is doing the cutting. That then changes the direction of cut that you want to go, because you suddenly swap from against the direction of cut to with the direction of cut. And that's what causes things to shoot out of the end. Now there's a couple of things to make it even more safe. Obviously you can have top feather boards, side feather boards. These kind of push sticks, which work really well, but they're not going to stop that projectile effect. Kind of grippy pads, they will keep down pressure, they can help keep side pressure, but again, they're not necessarily going to keep you from getting sucked in, but they're better than fingers, obviously. One of the tricks I use an awful lot to basically stop me from, or help stop me from cutting on the wrong side, is if you take a simple bit of scrap, some kind of straight edge, doesn't matter what it is, put that on the outside of the fence, then set your router table up to the final width that you want. Doesn't matter whether it's a rebate or a trench, you can do it either way. Lock the fence down. Place your stop up against the fence and put a couple of clamps on there to keep that in position. Now what I can do is loosen my fence, bring it out, and now I can nibble away. If I've got 30 of these bits to do, I set it up for a little nibble. Similar process to having the little turret stop on your router. Again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, check out my router depth video. Make your first cut, loosen the fence, move it in a little ways, make your second cut, nibble away all the way until you get to your stop. Boom, and you'll get the perfect width of cut as you would if you're doing it 100 times or once or whatever. Move the fence away from the cutter. Much safer. If you mess it up, you can always do the back pass. Because another thing that people forget is it really doesn't matter where your fence is. That's your kind of standard fence setup. It doesn't have to be parallel because we've got a rotating cutter, not a fixed linear cutter like on a table saw or a circular saw. The rotating axis is changed. So I can now be here with my fence, I can be here with my fence, I can be here with my fence, or anywhere around that side. All I have to do is remember to keep the fence to my right, and I can cut. I really hope this helps. If it's still confusing, leave a comment. If you liked it, leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here next time.
What? What do you mean? You do... I'm not following you here, buddy. I gotta go.